Good evening. Please be seated. Good evening. As the Mayor is currently on holiday, I will be chairing this evening. I would like to advise all present that in order to improve engagement in the democratic process, tonight's meeting will be recorded with the audio recording being published on the Council's website. The meeting will also be filmed and live streamed. If any members of the public do not wish to be filmed, I would like to give them the opportunity to leave the chamber now, if they so wish. Members are also reminded to respect other members when they are talking and do not speak across the chamber when other members speak. All requests to speak must go through me. I would also like to remind members to please stand and use the microphone when speaking. Members are also reminded to turn mobile phones off on the side. Before we begin the meeting this evening, I would first like to ask Reverend Canon Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Last Sunday was International Holocaust Memorial Day. Thurrock, like many communities, marked the event on Monday morning, when a good number of us here this evening took part in a very moving ceremony which included children from many different Thurrock schools. The 27th of January is the day for the world to remember the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust and others killed by Nazi persecution in the subsequent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. 27th of January marked the 74th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi death camp. HMD is a time when we seek to learn the lessons of the past and to recognise that genocide today does exist, and it doesn't exist on its own. It's a steady process that can begin if discrimination, racism and hatred are not checked, prevented and challenged. As leaders of this community, everyone here has a role, whether they be members, officers, members of the public, to challenge and stand up against discrimination and the use of language that encourages or legitimises hatred, division or exclusion. We all have a place to play. Prayer that's accredited to St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, sow faith. Where despair and darkness, sow hope and light. Where there is sadness, sow joy. For your mercy and your truth's sake we pray. Amen. Amen.
Move on to item 1 of the agenda, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors P. Rice, G. Rice, Thompson and Worrell. Are there any further apologies for absence? Councillor
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor Soudis or Councillor Soon-Pearson and Councillor Sanders will be absent.
Moving on to item. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Baker and Councillor Duck.
Oh, you're here now. The other one lost his seat. Yeah.
Right. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 28th of November 2018 be approved as a correct record as shown on pages 7 to 34 of the agenda. Is that seconded?
Second. Deputy Mayor.
Are there any comments on the accuracy? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Page 41, the paragraph attributed to what I said at that meeting. I would just like to have the word report deleted on the top sentence and replaced with the approach that Highways England have taken. I certainly didn't say that the report was in contempt of everyone in the borough. I think the report was a very good report. It's more the approach that Highways England have taken against the borough that was in contempt. So just a point of clarity, more than anything else, Mr Deputy.
Are there any other comments? Subject to those amendments, the meetings are approved. I also move that the minutes of the meeting of the Extraordinary Council held on 11th December 2018 be approved as a correct record as shown on pages 35 to 44 of the agenda. Is that second?
That's second, Mr Mayor.
Are there any comments on the opposite of the minutes?
Just for the better record, I think I jumped the gun.
Noted that previous comments were meant for this set of minutes. So subject to the amendments, the minutes are approved. Moving on to item 3, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to the consideration of any items of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. May I have any declarations of interest, please? Item 5, announcements on behalf of the Deputy Mayor and the Leader of the Council. I was pleased to attend the Holocaust Memorial Service on Monday. It was a very moving event, supported by a number of local schools, with some of their young pupils contributing to the event by giving readings. They were all so confident in their delivery, it was hard to believe they were not adults. One of the lessons I learned was that the mass Nazi movement didn't appear overnight, but grew slowly through propaganda and mistrust, turning once harmonious communities against one another. We therefore need to make sure that when we come across such propaganda or are questioned about the Holocaust or other atrocities, we make sure the truth is heard. We can't allow lies about any section of our society to build to such a point that the perpetrators of the lies can take control. Councillor Clever, would you wish to make any announcements?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to try and keep it very short, obviously, because we've got a packed agenda and to allow the FCC more time to answer questions. This week, works have started on the A13 widening scheme. This project is one of the largest local authority managed road schemes in the country, and we're doing everything possible to keep disruptions to an absolute minimum. And up to now, all the work's been taken off of the A13 carriageway. 2 lanes will remain open on the A13 in both directions during the daytime. That's the next phase of works. There will be a temporary speed limit and reduced width of the road, just to ensure the safety of the workers and the travelling public. Once the scheme is completed, it will now mean a continuous 3-lane carriageway from the M25 to Stanford home, hopefully to reduce congestion and improve journey times, further improving our economic growth in Thurrock. Many would have read that our officers from Thurrock Council joined Essex Police and the Environment Agency on an operation on Friday to tackle the scourge of illegal waste carriers coming into our borough and then dumping into our lanes and other fly-tipping areas. As we know, illegal waste disposal is quite a lucrative business. The operation involved stopping more than 30 vehicles carrying waste, which is approximately 1 every 12 minutes, which I think is quite good. And they were checked for their proper credentials, and we issued a number of fines for various offences, from littering to fly posting issues. Moving on to the HGVs, councils now consulted with those that live in Aveley on plans to help prevent lorries from using their roads as a rat run. Lorries are ignoring the weight limits and taking roads they should not be on to get to their destination. Whilst this is the responsibility of the police to enforce, we want to take as much action as possible to prevent it. and have been working on a solution for some time. The plan is to get this something in place sooner rather than later to help bring this problem to an end. Now, I know this is a menace across many wards in the whole of the borough, so there will be further consultations carried out across the borough as we go through next year to help reduce this problem. We had a really good news on two fronts from the DCMS, a boost for funding. We had two successful bids for funding from the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. The Thurrock on the south of Essex received 4.5 million funding to help improve broadband connectivity in the more rural and hard to reach areas, including Thurrock. It's a shame the Councillor Little's not here this evening to hear that, so I know that's a favourite issue for hers. The Thames Estuary Production and Corridor Partnership, of which we are part, has also been awarded 4.3 million from the DCMS Cultural Development Fund to kickstart a new £6.7 million creative estuary programme which aims to unlock the culture-led growth across Thurrock, South Essex and North Kent to establish the region as a creative hub. Finally, cleaning, cut and fillet updates. Since April this year, 1,625 fire ships have been cleared, 2,952 fixed penalty notices have been issued for varying offences from litter to some forms of antisocial behaviour. 1,030 acres of grass have been cut, that's the equivalent of 15,000 tennis courts. 2,504 potholes have been filled. We must remember the government gave us an extra £884,000 for the pothole repairs that must be done by the end of March, so we'll be fast doing them as much as we can. When it comes to the tonnes of waste collected by street cleaning and grounds maintenance team, that's 2,443 tonnes, which is the same weight as 36 space shuttles. That's on that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So, Mayor, we'll move on to item 6 of the agenda. Questions from members of the public. I will now take questions from the public. 4 questions have been submitted and accepted by the monitoring officer. These are set out on page 45 of the agenda. For the benefit of the recording of these minutes, this meeting, I'll ask that the questioner read out their question when asked to do so. We have 30 minutes for this item, therefore can I please ask that the questioner and member be as brief as possible in their questions to ensure that we cover as many of them as submitted tonight. I would also inform the questioner that any supplementary questions they may ask should not take the form of a statement and must be related to the original question or the answer that is given. Can I ask the Democratic Service please guide the member of the public?
Is there
a room? I haven't got the script to look up at the same time. Mr. Atkins, would you please read out your questions at Councillor Hall?
Could the portfolio holder please tell me what the criteria is for those children with special needs when it comes to qualifying for home to school transport?
Councillor Hall, please respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Atkins, for your question. First of all, I'll say that I really acknowledge that for parents, especially parents with children with special needs, it can be a very stressful time making sure that children get to school. Is one of the reasons I'm so proud that my department, working with the Department of Education, won just under £20 million to build the brand new Treetops Special Needs School. A part of the wider £70 million we're spending to build 3,500 school places in the borough within the next couple of years to look after these children. In terms of the responsibility we had for the statutory bracket of 5 to 16, we would offer school transport to any child who's got a statement of educational needs that is related to their mobility issue. So it's on an individual basis, that child will be assessed, their EHCP plan will be considered, and to look at what package is correct for them. And what I would say is that if you compare children with special needs with mainstream pupils, we remove the distance criteria. So where the statutory guidelines direct us to consider the 3-mile radius of school for mainstream children, SEND issues, we don't take that into consideration. So it's purely done on the basis of what is the mobility issue related to that specific child.
Thank you, Councillor Alderman. Mr Atkins, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for your reply. As you know, awards and benefits don't always contact the SEN department when making their final decision who gets home school transport. So how do they arrive at that final decision, considering they never see the children, nor are they medically trained?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. What I would say is that the package that is approved for individual children is signed off by the education team. It's not signed off by the finance director or the awards and benefits team. So when the plan is actually written, the team that actually assesses the plan is a part of the education directorate. So there is cross-working between the educational psychiatrist team and the team that physically decides what is the correct package for that individual child. We acknowledge that the system does not always work in the way that we want it to. It does not always work in the swiftest way that we want it to. As I announced last year, I'm soon to be starting, I think actually on Monday, a series of engagement events with parents, with head teachers and with carers, so they can talk directly to myself and to my director about some of the concerns they have when engaging with our SEND team and some of the problems they experience when they engage with our SEND team. We know we can do better, we know we can be swifter for parents. It's why we increase the capacity of our SEND team so we can turn around these plans quicker and assess the need for transport much faster. So we are on that journey to improve the system, but I can assure you that when transport decisions are made, those decisions are made by the education team.
Thank you, Councillor Alderman. Question 2 is from Mr Perrin. Mr Perrin, would you please read out your question to Councillor Johnson and set out the paper? I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr Perrin.
Good evening,
Mr Perrin, would you...
Deputy Mayor. Councillor Johnson, good evening to you. I believe the Council operates what it calls a like-for-like policy when it comes to moving from one council house to another, and also the carrying out of repairs, replacements in council rented housing, including outside repairs, replacements such as boundary fencing. Would you accept that the like-for-like policy is no longer an acceptable practice and needs replacing with a policy that puts emphasis on improvement and enhancement?
Councillor Johnson, please respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your question, Mr Perrin. I'm glad you asked it because there seems to be a recurring theme here as I responded to the exact same question to your ward councillor back in November. This is not policy, it's more, let's say, a terminology, shall we say. The council undertakes about 2,500 repairs per month across the portfolio, in line with the policy which the members have all agreed. The terminology like for like is only really ever used or referred to when it comes to repairs in more for aesthetics than anything else. So let's say if we was to replace a bathroom or a kitchen, things like cupboards or tiles would always look to be replaced like for like, more for aesthetics than anything else. So in answer to your question, do I think the policy is outdated? I think it would be an unworkable policy, but it isn't the policy.
Mr Perrin, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Mr Deputy Mayor. Perhaps I should have made it clear in my original question that I was specifically referring to boundary fencing when suggesting that the like-for-like policy is no longer an acceptable practice. Councillors Fletcher and Houghton, along the council along with the council quality assurance officers, after inspecting recent fencing repair work carried out by Mears, agreed that the work was below standard, unacceptable, and that chestnut fencing was no longer fit for purpose and should be replaced with a more appropriate type of fencing. I believe the leader of the council is of similar mind. In an email to Councillor Fletcher, a council quality assurance officer made this statement, quote, "The use of concrete posts and gravel boards for the fencing at number Broxburn Drive was to provide stability and also increase longevity of the fence, whilst taking into consideration cost effectiveness to ensure value for money."
Mr. Thurrock,
Councillor Johnson, I rest my case. Bearing in mind the quality assurance officer's assessment, will you recommend to Cabinet that in future chestnut fencing will not be used as boundary fencing for council rented houses?
Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Do you wish to respond?
I don't think there was a question in there, but other than will I say that we will use a specific type of fencing. I'll go as far as to say is we will use the best that we can do to make the best job. I'm afraid that's as far as I can go, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Moving on to question 3 from Ms. Hayward. I'll give time for them to get to the chair. Ms. Hayward, will you please read out your question to Councillor Ullin as set out on page 45 of the agenda?
Can the portfolio holder please explain what reasons there could be to withhold the use of area under Centurion House given to the people of Tilbury to be used for sports and recreation and being used by Tilbury Marshall Academy?
Councillor Ullin, please respond.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Hayward, for your question. The area beneath Centurion House is thought to be protected by a covenant, whereby it's described as being for community use or as a gym to ensure the use of the space has local benefit. The developer only transferred the management of that space to the council in December, and the Essex team need a little time to engage with the local community and ask them for their views and opinions about the future of this space and how they would want to see it used. This space is not being withheld. It's only right and proper that council seek guidance from the very community this space will serve. It would be very wrong of the council to give preferential treatment to any one community group over another. We believe in democracy, and it's only fair that the local community and charity groups have the opportunity to compete equally with each other for the use of the space.
Ms. Hayward, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Moving on to question 4, Mr. Arnold. Would you please like to read out your question to Councillor Coxon, as set out on page 45 of the agenda?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, can the portfolio holder help me understand how a covenant placed in Sandpits car park when it was disposed of, requiring a new owner to retain 100 free parking spaces or 3-hour short stays, is no longer in place?
Thank you for your question. The decision to dispose of Sandpits sites was taken by Cabinet in 2013, based upon a granting of a plan permission in 2012. The imposed covenant and those registered to the land registry have since lapsed due to the expiry of the planning permission linked to it in 2012, which can no longer now be implemented. The covenant can no longer therefore be enforced.
Mr. Arnold, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, sir. Is there any hope plans to the developer to keep the 100 spaces with 3 hours free parking? And is there anything that can be done in the future to prevent this from happening again?
Like you, I'm very disappointed at that when I first took administration of this, and it was very disappointing. So I'm asking the Thurrock legal team to look at if there's any case law that exists that we may be able to rely on to prevent the informer's covenants to be used and be able to tie it down to the developments there. But that doesn't help yourself and doesn't help the moment, obviously, what's gone wrong here. In the future, that will be done under retain, reuse and release is completely changed the asset strategy of this council to make sure that hopefully nothing like that will ever happen again under this Conservative administration.
Thank you, Councillor Cochran.
We now move on.
We now move on to item 7, petition from members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with Councillor Petitions 2 notice of petition have been received this evening. Mr. Mayers, you have 2 minutes to speak to your petition on the air quality in Tilbury.
Dear elected members and council officials, today I bring to the Chamber 750 petitions signed in support of residents of Tilbury who are suffering from this thinly milled dust that is blighting their homes. This is not about politics, this is not a paper exercise, it is about standing up for residents who are suffering from this day in and day out. Plus, it now is spreading to other areas such as Thurrock Park and Little Thurrock. I know this question has already been asked in the Chamber, however, the Council's omission that it's got iron oxide in it has obviously caused alarm amongst residents, and rightly so. The Council has previously stated that it takes this issue very seriously. However, Tilbury residents feel very let down after 650 objections to 2 asbestos transfer units were disgracefully ignored recently. I ask the Chamber on behalf of residents to please do all it can to stop these hazardous plants being built right next to people's homes. Tilbury has had enough of being dumped on, and I think it's only right for the councils to do further tests on the dust itself to 100% rule out such health issues as silicosis and iron oxide related illnesses. The council has Tilbury has a large amount of COPD sufferers, and some have never smoked a day in their life. In light of the dust, the worry is that these health conditions, as well as many others, are potentially linked. There is a real fear that foreign bodies are entering into people's lungs who breathe this through no fault of their own, just their locality. Tilbury has 4 schools in the region, and children of the area are potentially subject to hazardous dust. So I do not believe that we're scared to waste any more time and to just get on with this and do a review. We need to find out what's in the dust itself, whether it's harmful to their health, which will then provide evidence and then answer residents' questions. Once complete, we need the findings published and an action plan put in place to deal with any potential issues raised. Thank you.
The second petition is from Mr. Batchelor. Mr. Batchelor, you have 2 minutes to speak to your petition on the name change to Purfleet-on-Thames.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. My petition tonight is to change the name Purfleet to Purfleet-on-Thames with hyphens. Period. We consulted with residents and key stakeholders where support was overwhelming. Further support came from local councillors and our MP. At the PCI, I was so impressed with our campaign that he named our redevelopment Purfleet-on-Thames. Our petition gave people an option to express their views to say no. Only 2 responded to this and said no. The Twitter campaign, Keep Purfleet to Purfleet, as Purfleet, received just 1 follower. In September 2004, a motion by a full council that this name change was debated and duly carried. It was not followed through. Why change the name now? It will lift the profile of Purfleet and will add to the desirability of the area. Most importantly, it will raise the hopes and aspirations of all Purfleet residents. Many of you think we are a forgotten corner of Thurrock. In Victorian to Edwardian times, Purfleet became a destination place for tourists, attracting up to 1,500 people a day to our once popular village. Purfleet had a football team, cycle club, annual fair and a regatta. It was a thriving community and became known as Purfleet on Thames. Since those idealistic times, Purfleet changed. It became an industrialised and unloved area. Many promises since to regenerate Purfleet failed to materialise, leaving residents disheartened and the area deprived of infrastructure. Purfleet is about to change again into an exciting, vibrant, new destination, riverside town of choice, incorporating the historic past and the dynamic future. Our proposed name change links the best past with our hopes for the future. New town, new aim.
Thank you, Mr. We now move on to item 8. Update report in respect of those petitions presented to full council and council officers. This report will be found on page 47 and 48 of the agenda and is for information on the status of petitions handed in at council meetings and council offices. Item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Councillor Gill, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On SACRA, can I remove Councillor Pearson and her replaced by Councillor Thurrock, please?
Councillor Kent, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made? No, thank you. Councillor Spillman, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made? No, thank you. Are members in agreement to the one change? We now move on to the presentation by Essex Police. 30 minutes have been allocated for this item. After the presentation, I have allocated a maximum of 20 minutes for members to ask questions. I would like to remind members that this is a question and answer session and not for long statements. I will accept one question per member, but I will not accept any supplementary questions. If time permits, I will accept further questions from those members that have already asked a question. I would like to welcome Roger Hurst, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Chief Inspector Claire Thurrock, Essex Police, and Justin Benson, Rue, Station Manager at Essex County Fire and Rescue Service, and Darren Horseman, Assistant Director for Communications and Engagement in Leeds. I would like now to ask Roger Hurst to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm delighted to be here again this evening. I've met lots of you before, but not all of you. So I'm Roger Hurst, I'm the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. It's not just a presentation about the police, it's about the police and the Fire and Rescue Service. So I'll try and keep it tight. I think the main part of the evening needs to be for you to ask the questions and see if we can either answer them here in the chamber this evening or, if necessary, take them away and come back with a more detailed response. If it's strategic, it's me. If it's operational, it is either Chief Inspector Talbot or Station Manager Benson Roll. Darren's here to make sure that she takes down all the notes of the things I'm supposed to do and that I do as many of them as I possibly can when we go home. So, in terms of what I wanted to present to you this evening, I think the first bit is from me about the big picture. I'm sure you are well aware crime across the country, crime across the county, demand on police time is up. There was a very good long declining trend from the early 1990s through to May 2015. Not just here, actually in most of the developed world. For some reason, May 2015 it stopped, and since then it's started to rise again. We can debate a long time about what cause and effect is, but the reality is that demand on police time is up. It's more complex. It's certainly got something to do with the internet. We get a lot of new sorts of crime coming from the internet. The internet is good for social media, it's good for keeping in contact, it's good for doing business, it's good for crime. So we've got new stuff which is to do with fraud, child sexual exploitation, harassment, hate. All of those things are taking place there, but it's not just new sorts of crime, it's not just more complex crimes, it's also the familiar crimes that we've known for a long time. So I think it is fair to note that the one that probably concerns us most is violence with injury. So serious violence is undoubtedly on the rise. Across the country, you will have read knife crime in particular. In London, it's been really bad, it's up by more than 20%. Across the country, up by 15%. I'm pleased that here in Essex, it's not up by that much. It's only up by around 5% in the last year, but it is up and we need to get ahead of that. So a big chunk of what I do is to do with setting the strategy. So we have had some very good discussions with the Chief Constable, the Chief Officer team, about what we can do about these things. We have a new crime prevention strategy in place. I note that one of your questions was, how do we intend to monitor that? There are lots of things we can do. Certainly in terms of hate crime, we'll be looking at victim satisfaction rates. We'll be looking at the effectiveness of various actions executed by the Serious Crime Directorate on organised crime groups, also on the success of diversionary activity that we're doing. Are we getting kids out of being preyed on by these by people? We'll be looking at proceeds of crime and what we're seizing, but actually the ultimate bottom line is, are we bringing crime and disorder in the county down? The big metric is, are we being successful in reversing this rising trend? Now that is something that we won't do alone here in Essex. We have to work with our colleagues in the London Metropolitan Police Service. We have to work with our colleagues in the other neighbouring counties, in Kent, in Suffolk, in Cambridgeshire, etc. And we have to work with our colleagues across the country, because some of the crime here, done in Essex, for instance, is done by county lines that operate out of Liverpool. So there is a lot of cross-border crime that we need to coordinate well over. We're doing a lot of that. I know that Benjamin Harrington, the Chief Constable, is regularly in contact with his counterparts in those services. He goes to the Chief Council meetings, they put in place strategies for doing this. I similarly am working with my colleagues on the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners to do the same sort of thing, and we have been taking together, the National Police Chiefs Council and the APCC have been taking those arguments to the Home Office and making them robustly and saying we need to have more resource to get ahead of this issue. We did that last year. I'm sure you remember from the conversation that we had last year, we won some extra money there. It was effectively match funding. So the government put in 225 million into central policing, counter-terrorism, National Crime Agency, Serious Crime Directorate, those sorts of things. And we, local police and crime commissioners, in my case police fire and crime commissioners, raised the council tax by £12, the equivalent of £1 a month on an average Bandy property, to get the matching 225 million. In Essex, what that's meant is we've been able to invest more in the sorts of technology we need to mean that policing can be more effective, and we've been able to recruit more officers. So we have, starting April last year, recruited an additional 150 officers. They are being deployed across the county. The first passing out of those new officers was right at the end of November. There were, I think, 54 of them who passed out then. The rest of them are happening now. They're being deployed from then through to the end of February. So they are landing with local policing teams kind of as we speak, not at this very moment, but being rolled out over the current weeks. That's a step forward, but in terms of the analysis that we did back in 2017, that's only part of what we needed to do. So that analysis said we were well provided for in some areas, such as child protection units, public protection, and serious organised crime, but we were very much depleted in terms of overall crime prevention, local policing, community policing, those sorts of areas, to the tune of about 300 officers. 150, therefore, is only halfway. Therefore, last few months since September, I've been back up in Westminster, regularly making the case, and we have won, again, the freedom to do more with match funding from government this year. So this year, the incremental total, on top of the 450 million put in last year, it's going to be 970 million in total going into policing in the UK. Takes the total policing budget to about 14 billion. Of that, about 500 million is coming from central government into central policing functions again, but also some of that now going into local policing. So it's about 300 million of their slug is actually coming to local police forces. And again, we are being asked to match fund it through local council tax. So last week I took to the Police, Fire and Crime panel, who scrutinised my decisions, budget proposal to raise the local council tax in Essex by the equivalent of £2 a month, £24 a year. That will mean that in total, government money and local, we will have about £23 million more to spend in 1920 than we have had this year. That means that the Chief Constable's plans are to hire another 215 officers and around another 70 police staff to actually mean we can get ahead of where we need to be. So as I said, the analysis was we needed about 290, nearly 300. Actually, we're going to have recruited a total of 365 by this time next year. So I get that my timing isn't great, because it would have been much nicer to have been asking for more money after you'd seen the benefits of the last increase. But I'm sure you understand it takes time to recruit, it takes time to train, it takes time to deploy. That's where we are. That will mean a benefit as well for your borough here in Thurrock. So I think, if we just stick on to the next slide, what we've done with last year's money is laid out for you up there. It's 6 more officers into the community policing team, 6 more officers into the local response team, 3 into the domestic abuse GENO team, and then you have been extremely supportive, really welcome the fact that you have actually also decided to fund some extra officers. These are on top of what you would have gotten out of the analysis that we did, so the commitment we made to you last year out of the 150. So that's another 6, I believe, coming into the team, and I believe, Chief Inspector, you've managed to find another 3 or 4 to shall we say, try and match what you're doing, so to bring more power to bear here in Thurrock and make a real difference. They're not all there yet, are they? Can I just ask the Chief Inspector to say a word?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, that team isn't set up at the moment, but it's something that we're working really closely with the council with at the moment, and moving forwards, we're it's in train, but we're not quite there yet, but we know what the ambition is, and we will have that team set up shortly, and they're going to be working to community safety priorities, which will benefit the whole district.
If I may continue?
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's essentially how we deployed the 150. The other good thing, actually, Special Constabulary, I think you all know that I've been a big advocate of the Special Constabulary. It's a lot of the important glue that keeps policing as part of the community and makes sure that people know what's going on in their community. We've had a real breakthrough here in Thurrock. For a while it was quite difficult to recruit specials here for some reason. Now we've been really successful. I think we're up to about 28 now, so that's a good step forward. You want me to move forward promptly? Okay. The next slide is very briefly about what we're doing around preventing serious violence. We've won some extra money on top of what I was just saying, another £664,000 from the government to invest in our violence and vulnerability strategy, which means that we are going to be able to do some more diversionary activity for kids. You will be getting your share of that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, if we move on to the Fire and Rescue Service, just to highlight to you, different picture there. So the good news is that whilst demand on the police service has been rising, as I've described, the demand on the Fire and Rescue Service over the same time frame has been falling. There were a couple of years where it ticked up, but it's actually coming back down again now, which is great. It means that the budget pressure on the Fire and Rescue Service is not the same as it is on the police service, which is good. It means that we don't have to think about the stretch. We do need, of course, to make sure that we are well kitted out to respond to the risks in the county as a whole, and we're not trying to deplete that, but it does mean, I think, that we can cope with the pressures from, the welcome pressures in many ways, from more pay and indeed for better pensions, from a 2.99% increase in the council tax. It's £2.07p on a Band D property for the Fire and Rescue Service. The other thing I'd just like to flag to you is we are launching our new Fire and Rescue Plan, which is the strategic plan for the Fire and Rescue Service in the county. A number of you and your colleagues have been involved in giving us feedback on that. The key priorities are on the slides in front of you. I suppose the big difference is there completing the cultural change programme in the Fire and Rescue Service, which Councillor Kent and others were very much involved in driving forward in the first place. The new bits are driving forward with broadening the role of the fire service, so the Fire and Rescue Service, so they get more involved in rescue work, and I think focusing more on the vulnerable in society. It is a striking fact that we, just as levels of deprivation have a bearing on so much which is unfortunate for people, and in fact that goes for fire and rescue incidents as well.
Would any members? Councillor Smith.
Good evening and thank you for the report. What I hear time and time again from residents is it's not worth phoning the police, they don't turn up. Quite often residents have difficulty getting through on the 101 service, and to my understanding this doesn't seem to have improved since last year. What strategies do you have to improve your connection with local residents and perhaps improvements to the 101 service?
Thank you very much for the question. Very relevant. It was an issue when I was last here. I think when I was last here I said we'd hired extra 15 people to go into the 101 service. You're quite right, all that did was keep pace with the increase in demand. Didn't make it better at all. We had to circle around again. Assistant Chief Constable Mills took the issue in hand, has put in place some detailed plans.
Sorry, there's a lot of questions that are going to be on it tonight. Could you, what can you do to improve going forward, please?
We've de-bottlenecked it, we've made it slicker. The average wait time's down from 29 minutes to 13. We're still working on it. Thank you.
Councillor Spill.
Thank you. A former Chief Constable of Essex, Stephen Cavanagh, said, I hope and expect we all treat it as a matter of shame that Essex has the lowest funding per head per population of any police force in the country. Is that still the case? And if so, when are we going to see improvements? And if not, where are we in that league table now?
Thank you very much for the question. We were the bottom, we're no longer the bottom. We have actually managed to improve that. We're still in the bottom quartile. It'll take a while to get to where we need to be. That is part of the negotiations that I do with the Home Office, step by step. I think that we will get a new, fairer funding formula coming in, but not in 2020, more likely in 2021.
Councillor Cherry, would you like to ask your question?
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to start to say thank you for the good work Essex Police does for us in Thurrock. And secondly, I'd like to say that since I've moved from Chapel St Mary to Little Thurrock Rectory Ward, I learned that neighbourhood watch has died off. So I've relaunched Neighbourhood Watch, working with Roger Pascal, and we had a meeting in November. We had 80 people turn up. We canvassed and they turned up. And one of the questions that comes out from Neighbourhood Watch is the difficulty in getting in contact with Essex Police. The 101 service puts people off, totally. Also, they're asking who is our neighbourhood police officer and how do we get in contact with them? And what question? Yes, and my question is that people are asking how do we get in contact with the neighbourhood officer, and I would like to invite yourself along, yourself, Mr Hurst, and yourself, Mr Abbott, to perhaps come along to meet our meeting, 6th of February at Thurrock Hall, 7 p.m. The officers would like to extend that invitation to you, and as part of an engagement, would you please attend?
So, final response, really brilliant that you revived that Neighbourhood Watch. We've tried a lot to make it easier for Neighbourhood Watch to get together and give that information. 101, as I said, is improving. Please encourage Neighbourhood Watch, because they're normally fairly switched on people, to do it online, because that is a better service. And in terms of actual direct contact, I think I will, and I'll check my diary if I can, I will, otherwise we'll find another time. But I'll hand over to Talbot to answer the detailed question of who to contact.
Thank you, and I echo the views of the Commissioner. Thank you ever so much for the invitation. If I can't come, I will make sure that one of my team is there, because I think that's next week, isn't it? So I'll make sure that one of my team is there, and then they'll be able to introduce themselves directly to you. And each area does have a dedicated neighbourhood officer, so I'll ascertain who exactly that is for that specific area and make sure that they can attend if they're available to do so. Thank you.
Can I just remind members that to keep your question succinct to the point? Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Sorry, before I ask my question, I would like to place on record my thanks to Chief Inspector Claire Talbot and in particular PC Rowan Perrin for their swift and robust action in tackling the antisocial behaviour on Brandon Groves, Flowers Estate and Canterbury Parade. Certainly within 48 hours of them being told about this by myself, it's fair to say you smashed it and got rid of it. Thank you very much. Having said that, could you please explain to me why there seems to be an inconsistent approach in applying Section 61 against unauthorised travellers, against unauthorised traveller encampments?
I'll give it the first try, and I might hand over to you. So, I think you're right, there used to be. We, a year ago now, held a couple of round tables with all councils, everyone came, Chief Constable was there, and the relevant senior officers. We pulled together how we should do it better. That protocol was sent out to all councils. If you haven't got that, we can send it to you again, but it does lay out what the process is and how it's best done. Reality is, of course, that unlawful encampments are not necessarily criminal, so there may not be a way of exercising it if there is no criminal activity, but we are trying to standardise the approach. We've put in place the Gypsy and Traveller Rural Engagement team to make sure we get more consistent, and in the budget we've just put forward, we're doubling the size of that team, so it should get better again. But it is fair to say that the average time of unlawful encampment has halved since we did that.
Thank you. Councillor Redson, would you like to place your question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner. As an authority, we have repeatedly asked for action on our motorbike issues in the borough and beyond. Can you tell the members in the chamber what is being done and what successes, if any, have been achieved?
If I may, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'll hand this on to the Chief Inspector.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. One of the great partnership work that we've undertaken with the Council is in relation to some funding that we've received for an operation called Operation Caesar, which actually is being led by the officer that Councillor Jeffries just mentioned, PC Perrier. Some funding has been given to tackle the issue, and we've seen some significant results. There's so much work that's been ongoing in relation to it. So far we've had 6 arrests, we've had 25 Section 59 warnings, which warns people that will remove their bike from them. We've had 16 reports of for people for no insurance. You know, failed to stop pursuits. We've had cannabis warnings. We've had stop and searches. So the operation is an ongoing operation in key areas. So we've targeted areas of Tilbury, South Ockenden, and other areas where we're highlighting that this is an issue. If there's other areas that we aren't reaching because it's not hitting our radar, then we're more than happy to speak to you about that, because it is something that we've done. We've seen a huge drop in the amount of nuisance bites in the areas that we've been targeting.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, would you like to place a question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Antisocial behaviour. In your opening speech, Commissioner, you never mentioned it. It seems to be a big problem. So, do you think, Commissioner, that to a degree, keeping the lid on antisocial behaviour will, in some cases, stop that antisocial behaviour from escalating into more serious crimes?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm sorry if I skipped it. It was supposed to be part of the bit when I talked about prevention, but I was working to a fairly tight schedule. Absolutely, I think we have to recognise that the change in focus and refocusing on what we can do to prevent has to mean that we sweat the small stuff. We know that stops people getting into a habit of bad behaviour, which can become a habit of crime and can become a way of life if it doesn't develop. So we have to do the work we can to divert young people and give them other stuff to do. That's what we're doing with the £664,000 that I mentioned to you earlier. That will have an impact on antisocial behaviour. We've already been focusing on it quite a lot, and I think we're quite proud of the fact that antisocial behaviour across the county has come down. We know that's true because we do the surveys as well. We don't just take the number that's reported. We actually do surveys and hear from people whether they're reporting it or not. So what I know is that the number of people who are reporting confidence is up, and the volume recorded is down. So we have had a real impact. It's not where we want it to be. I notice you shaking your head. I'm not being smug or self-satisfied. There's a long way to go, but it is working.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Two questions. First of all, it echoes really what you just said. Is there any way of estimating the true reporting figures on the basis that some crimes are not reported? So are you able to quantify the number of people who don't, more exactly? Question two, possibly a bit more important, any plans to open closed police stations? I think would be a morale booster and would give confidence in the effectiveness of the policing in the area. Thank you.
In terms of the confidence in the figures, I mean, crime data integrity is very much a factor that the Magistrate Inspectorate look at in detail. We have not fared badly on that, on a national comparator. It's still not where we want it to be. It's very hard to know how much you don't know of what you don't know. We know we don't know stuff, but we do these professionally managed external third-party surveys to try and keep a handle on it. And that's to do with victim satisfaction, reporting confidence, whether people believe that they're getting through or not. It's showing an improving trend, but it's not where we want it to be. In terms of opening buildings to restore confidence, I think actually what restores confidence is seeing the police in your community, preventing crime and dealing with crime. I'm not going to spend millions on buildings. I need to spend millions, we need to spend millions on police officers.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Good evening. Could you tell me what is being done to tackle the antisocial behaviour and fear of crime on Thurrock Parade and the surrounding areas, please?
Again, if I may, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll hand over to the Chief Inspector.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. We have been looking at this quite closely, and actually the local officer for that area has done quite a bit of work recently, and just yesterday we chaired a meeting with Youth Offending, the local senior school, the Community Safety Partnership, multi-agency approach to identifying who are the people causing those problems in that area and issuing them with community protection warnings and community protection notices where possible. Also, high visibility patrolling is what we're doing in that area, and that's going to increase, and with the new officers that we're getting, visibility is going to be key, and actually getting those officers out there being more visible, because we are aware of those issues. And I appreciate the comments that have been made earlier. We know that sometimes the problem is moving, and actually Thurrock Parade is somewhere that we're really having a good look at the moment. As I say, just yesterday had a multi-agency meeting around it.
Thank you.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The police drop-in facility at Corringham Fire Station is a welcome development, but are there any plans to develop this set up further in order to provide Corringham with a permanent police presence?
I think the Chief Inspector would confirm that there is a permanent police presence across Thurrock. It's not a question of where they're going to sit and drink tea. We need to have good places for officers to be able to do the necessary rest and catch up with their bits of paperwork. Corringham Fire Station, it's working really well. Got some really good feedback from the Fire and Rescue Service and from the Police Service and from the public about the fact that it's improved some visibility, that it gives them more flexible working patterns, allows them to be out and about more with the public. We will, I think, look at how we use fire station drop-ins across the county again. At the moment, the model that we have in Corringham and in Manningtree, only two that we've got, is working. So the current plan is to roll that out to 10 or a dozen more fire stations across the county. Next stage, what else could we do there? It would be really convenient, I think, in certainly some of the more remote areas, if the police could have lockers for secure kit there. We aren't quite there yet. We need to make sure we've got the right security in place. But what we're not going to do is start to put in place old-fashioned police boxes or permanent police station facilities where we have to have police officers sitting in a building. They won't be able to leave them because they're tied to those buildings, because they have to man them or person them. What we want is them out there with the public, doing that crime prevention and detention work.
Councillor Bernardo.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you for this your presentation. The issue of gangs and violence has been very worrying, and particularly to obviously members of my community, because if you think of what's happening in London, and you're always scared of, you don't want something to happen like that. And I must commend the effort of the police and also her youth offending team for what you've done in terms of banning some of these gangs. And I believe that some of the issues from drug peddling, and that's what I suspect, that's leading to fighting for, if the police would deploy CCTV in some hotspots area, because even in Tilbury we've got hotspots. I'm not saying it's particularly black people selling, but obviously there are people selling drugs. And crime, obviously, under the influence of of drugs or drink, alcohol and all that, people then commit crime. So I just want to find out, are you going to be using CCTV to cover some areas in hotspots areas? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And you're absolutely right to put your finger on the gangs issue. It is clearly something that we need to get on top of. The county lines are a national issue. Drug dealing gangs primarily being driven from the big urban centres, but exploiting the more provincial towns and indeed in some rural areas. I was hearing only today that the two biggest spots apparently for county lines to target nationally are Blackpool and Telford. Who would have thought? We have our own problems here in Essex, we need to deal with them. So, as I said, the strategy is in part coordination through Serious Crime Directorate with the Metropolitan Police, Merseyside Police, etc., dealing with the heavy-duty organisers of these organised crime gangs, but also, very importantly, making sure that we coordinate well with our partners here. Housing is important. You know, the cookery that they do, which is preying on vulnerable people, turning their flat into their apartment into a drug dealing centre. We need to work with you to make sure we get that right. And again, working with young people to make sure that they're not there to be preyed on in the way that these drug gangs like to prey on. They're very keen on using 12, 13, 14-year-old kids to do the running. So we need to get all of that right. CCTV, that's somewhere again where we work in partnership with you. So we don't tend to run our own CCTV networks. If there is a place where we need to have CCTV, let's talk about it and work out how we can get our heads around it. We do a lot with the private sector on CCTV, we do a lot with public sector partners on CCTV. We don't actually run our own police CCTV.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Excuse me, question I think for Chief Inspector Talbot. Excuse me, in the ward I represent, we've seen since before Christmas quite a noticeable rise in burglaries, unattempted burglaries, seemingly by organised gangs. We've noticed, as I say, quite a rise, and it's becoming quite a bone of contention, quite a source of concern and worry for local people. So my question is, and I appreciate we're talking about numbers, extra numbers of policemen are something for the future, but where we are now, what I'd like to know from Chief Inspector Talbot is how you can reassure the people of South Upland, and I'm sure other parts of the borough as well, that in the wee small hours they're not going to be continually visited by people who are intent on breaking in. This is specifically, if you like, an out-of-hours problem, and I'd be interested to know what thoughts you have and what you can do to try and reduce that problem.
Absolutely, and thank you for your question. And I have to say that, so in the Commissioner's opening speech, talking about when the new officers are going to land, we're seeing them now. It's quite impressive seeing the numbers of officers now parading at shift. So tonight, when at 10 o'clock, there'll be a lot more officers there than there have been. And that is giving them that opportunity that they haven't had previously to actually get out there, get out patrolling. We also get resources from our central teams, from the operational support group, and if we are identifying there's a particular spike or a trend in one particular area, then again we request their services and they come down, and we've had some really good results recently in some stop checks, stop and searches, weapons being seized, you know, and some of those people may well have been burglars that we're stopping en route to something. If there's a particular area, I'll take that away to have a little look and see if there's something specific going on in South Ockenden that's a bit out of kilter with what we'd normally see around this time of year, because we do a lot of comparative work, but I'll take that away and have a look at it.
Thank you. If I could now ask Roger Hurst if you make some concluding remarks. If you could keep it to a couple of minutes, that would be...
I'll certainly manage to keep it to that or less. So, thank you very much for your time. I think what we've heard is a continued concern about police accessibility. Can you get through? What's the best way to do that? Understand very clearly that we have to keep on working on that. My experience talking to other forces about how they handle that has been that if you can get the average wait time for 101 down to below 11 minutes, 10 minutes, you stop to feel it as a problem, because that's getting through to someone and getting your problem dealt with in 10 or 11 minutes appears to be where the public find it satisfactory. We aren't there yet, but we are well on our way to getting there, and we need to make sure it happens. The other thing I've taken away very strongly is you're still concerned very much about antisocial behaviour. We have plans in place, we need to demonstrate that they're working, and then obviously specific local areas, there are things that we need to do. I didn't get much feedback on the fire and rescue plan, so I would just encourage you to go away and read it, and if you have some thoughts, please do come back to us on that, because it's an important piece of strategic planning. We would really welcome your thoughts. It will make a difference, I think, to what we're doing across the county in terms of community safety, keeping your residents safe. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We will come back when you're happy to have us again.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to thank Roger Hurst, Chief Inspector Claire Talbot, Justin Betchell-Rill and Darren Alston for their time this evening. The order to stay for the remainder of the meeting, or members would fully understand if you need to leave the chamber.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, we'll now move on to item 11, the report on the healthy housing for the third age, improving older people's health through housing and annual public health reform 2018. Councillor Hall, could you please introduce the report? The report can be found on pages 49 to 94 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This is the third time I've presented the annual public health report to full council. First of all, what is the annual public health report and what are the JSNA products that we produce? For public health, it's about data-led interventions. If you look at the journey that we've been on in the last few years, it's not by accident as a borough we've gone from 2 good GPs to over 21 good GPs today. That's data-led intervention. Working between the public health team here in the council and the CCG. The reason this public health report is aimed at housing is because we are trying to bring the same data-led intervention from the public health arena, which we used with the CCG, this time through the regeneration, the planning and the housing function. But why housing specifically? First of all, we know that healthy housing enables independence. As people get older and become infirm and experience health issues, we know it's important to make sure we are providing the type of homes that are easily adaptable, easily accessible to support older people in our communities. And it's also important for social mobility. I mean, placemaking is quite a bland term, but ensuring we're creating the type of communities where older people are able to shop locally, are able to indulge in leisure facilities locally, is key to making sure that they can continue a fit life. The local plan gives us a huge opportunity, and that's why the information in this report, it's vital that we do distill that into concrete actions, and it's what myself and my team are doing. The opportunity the local plan gives us is to make sure we build communities that are sympathetic to one another. We can't just take the approach that we want to build smaller properties or more adaptable properties for older people in conclaves and therefore separate older people from the rest of the community. Nor can we take the approach that we need to take complex issues like dementia and come up with what I think are pretty retrograde ideas like a dementia village. We don't want to create a sort of segregation in our community. We want to make sure that the type of housing that we create is a genuine, for lack of a better term, cradle-to-grave system. Our next steps will be producing a JSNA targeted at the younger side, because obviously there are tremendous health implications to young people regarding their housing. Principally economic, where they can live dictates how they can access employment and also how much capital they can build up and therefore move on with their lives. And separately from this is a piece of work myself and Councillor Cox are working very hard on, the skills agenda. I met with colleagues from ASLA, from the CELEP, from Estuary Housing and others in the last few weeks. I'll be meeting more in the next few weeks to ensure that as a South Essex corridor we're doing everything we can to train the type of skills that we need to ensure that we actually build and actually deliver these properties. If you look at the integrated medical centres, the happy standard that we use for older people's housing, this is a very high spec. We need to make sure we're creating skills locally. Finally, Mr Deputy Mayor, I want to thank the public health team for producing this work. It really does reinforce my faith in politics that you can get incredibly talented people like Ian Wake and his team produce a really complicated document and then have me peacock by presenting it, which for me is how the system should work. And that, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm happy to answer questions.
As Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee, do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Just to say, as always, following on from Councillor Howden's report, comments, Ian and the team do produce fantastically evidence-based reports that really set a direction for us on where we should be on so many elements of our policy making here at the Council. I think this public health report shows the necessary joint working that we need with housing, but there is also elements that come up at the HOS committee that also show that we need to work so closely with planning and other areas. Health is integral to so many parts of our council and our policy making. And just to say, it's a fantastic report. Thank you very much.
Councillor, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, again, I thought it was a really good, detailed report, lots of good stuff in there, lots of good evidence. If I've got a criticism, I guess that it's once we get to the recommendations just seem a little thin. I would like to see a bit more meat there, I'd like to see some kind of more definite. And I think specifically, if I can look at the recommendations, recommendation 1A, producing a single directive to identify a range of support services available for older people. Really good idea, fully support it. But we're told elsewhere, in the document on page 34, about the lack of older people being able to access things online. So can we just make sure that that's available in a range of formats? We don't just be wrong. 3B, to undertake some focused official public engagement on specific issues. Again, I really welcome that. There's a question there, which is, should this be through your place, your voice, or a separate exercise? I think that really needs to be a separate exercise, one that's tailored specifically for the purpose. And 3D, to develop the quality and accessibility of advice on housing options available to residents. One of the things I think that many of us have a real concern with outside of this is just the lack of good quality independent housing advice that's available in Thurrock now. I would make a plea for whatever advice comes through this document that we try to get it as independent for local authority as we possibly can. And very finally, can I just have a please? In part, this document was absolutely impossible to read in this agenda. Can we just give some thought to how documents like this come out to minutes?
Thank you. Councillor Spill, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr Mayor. A lovely report. We got through housing over scrutiny without any really negative comments over it. It's a wonderful report. But I just think it's a bit detached from the financial reality that we have. You know, the HRA is really life support. And none of the aspirations in there are actually achievable unless we address that. Now, I would love, and I would ask you today, I would love to, and I know it's not fair to say that. I mean, Councillor Howard first like to be in papers and the odd photo opportunity. I don't think that's an insult to say it. But I would love to see him in the papers, hear him on the radio, telling the government that we've got a housing crisis and only massive investment from them is going to solve it. That's the photo opportunity I'd love to see. Is it going to happen?
It's a little bit creepy how much like photos are made.
Councillor Potter, would you like to?
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Again, I'd like to just echo that this report is really welcome, and it's really nice to see this kind of level of detailed kind of evidence-based work going on. I was at Housing ONS as well. My concern about this report, I think many of the proposals are very sensible, they're ambitious, and it's good to have those kind of ambitions. My concern is that a number of the proposals rest on actually building new properties. So my concern is that when this paper actually came to Housing ONS, it was foreshadowed by another paper, the HRA Business Plan, which made very plain this council's complete lack of ambition and confidence in its own ability to currently deliver housing. Despite the possible opportunities provided by lifting the borrowing cap, it painted a really bleak picture of right to buy receipts in danger and little hope of any new council-led housing projects getting off the ground beyond what we initiated when the administration 4 years ago. Developers are clearly not going to do this kind of stuff without us supporting them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having papers like this come to us, they'd be doing it anyway. So the key point is how do we as a council make these proposals a reality, and I'd hate to see a report of this quality and with these kind of ambitious proposals. I hate to see it being consigned to the filing cabinet because we don't have the will to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I ask the portfolio holder to tell me what provision he's making for the elderly with regards to health and housing in Ockenden?
Councillor Rupert.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Yes, with regards to the community hospital at the Long Lane site, does currently provide housing there. With the changes that are proposed for the integrated medical centres, will the levels of bedding be sustained there or elsewhere in the Long Lane piece?
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Howden, for your report. You touched on the IMCs, the Integrated Medical Centres, and I understand that we're still some 8 GPs short in Tilbury of our normal working quota. Can it be possible, Councillor Howden, if you could give us, or give me, an update on the delivery of that IMC in Tilbury, please?
There's no more questions, remember, so Councillor Howard can read this on up, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just going through the comments one at a time. I thank Councillor Holloway for her thanks. Councillor Kent's point about independent housing advice. Yes, I think that's the correct thing to do. Councillor Apothecary's point about lacking the will to deliver this. I'll remind Councillor Apothecary that when we announced in March of last year that the council would directly put in the money in Thurrock Regeneration Limited to deliver 1,000 new homes, that was not done through the HRA, that was done through us directly. So this image that you're creating, that there is no financial way we could afford to do anything, that was pre the announcement that the cap was going to be lifted from the HRA. So we already announced plans to deliver 1,000 new homes, regardless. So now that the cap has been lifted off the HRA, it gives us even more scope to deliver on the type of projects that we were already going to do. Well, you shake your head. Why do you tell me how I'm wrong?
The HRA business case,
But it's fully funded. It's already funded. And the HRA is balanced, by the way. Councillor Spill's comment about it being detached from finances and a couple of rather creepy references to how much you like to see in the press.
We all like seeing
I would point out to him that the point of this document isn't purely about how we deliver properties through the HRA, how we deliver council properties. This is about how we support and massage the private sector as well in the way to deliver the type of homes that we need. It's why I've met with Estuary, who are a housing provider. It's why I've also met with Swan, who are a private provider, to ensure that we're in a position that we know clearly what it is we want. We need to articulate what type of properties do we need for older people, so when we're doing the local plan consultation, we can actually mix in those key points. And if you are concerned about how we make sure we do deliver on that, perhaps it would be better to positively vote in favour of consulting the public on the local plan rather than abstaining on it. Councillor Allen's I'll get there. Councillor Allen's point about...
You've had your time, Councillor. You're an experienced member, you should know how to time yourself.
I'm not asking Councillor Allen. Councillor Allen's very important.
Councillor.
I write to Councillor Allen.
Are members in agreement with the recommendations in the report?
Agree.
The recommendations are carried. We now move on to item 12, the report of the local council tax scheme. Councillor Heffernan, would you please introduce the report? The report is found on pages 95 to 100 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. A concise report which is effectively saying we will retain the existing benefits of the council tax scheme that the council currently affords. For members who perhaps aren't aware, the The local council tax scheme is developed and something that is funded through by the local authority in exclusivity in terms of a number of people in particular circumstances, whether it be war widows, people with war disablements, pensionable age, people of particular lower incomes. It's a scheme that the council has developed over a number of years following the changes in 2013. We spent just under £8 million servicing such an arrangement last year. The effective report seeks to retain the existing criteria with a small addition of injection of another 0.3 million, so up to 8.3 million servicing the local council tax scheme for next year.
Councillor Garish, as Chair of the Corporate Over and Scrutiny Committee, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I won't speak at length on this item. I think particularly considering that we are proposing no changes to the current scheme, I'm sure members will support that. The one, I guess, rider to that I would add is that I think it would be interesting for corporate overview and scrutiny over the next year just to review the elements of the council tax scheme to start to understand maybe what some of those levers are that we might look at in future. But other than that, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm more than happy to support the proposal this evening.
Councillor John Kent, do you wish to speak?
No.
Councillor Spillman, do you wish to speak?
No.
As no members have indicated they wish to speak, Councillor Kent, do you wish to sum up?
Are you timing me? We've got 3 minutes. Not at all. All jokes aside, Oliver, absolutely, I think that's a really good idea. Not without time, perhaps. So yeah, we'll bring that forward or through your committee, obviously, assuming you're still chair. But yeah, I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. But other than that, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, I shall forward the paper.
Thank you. Are members in agreement with the recommendations in the report?
Agreed.
Item 13, to receive reports from cabinet members. There are 2 cabinet member reports on the agenda this evening. The time allowed for each report is 15 minutes. I will take one question from each member and I'll come back to those members who may wish to ask any additional questions if time allows. Please can I remind members to be as brief as possible in their questions and answers to ensure that we cover as many of the questions submitted. The report of Councillor Bedfield, the Cabinet Member for Public Protection and Antisocial Behaviour, can be found on pages 101 to 112 of the agenda. Councillor Devil, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. As everyone knows, I feel this report should be more about asking questions and rating something that I'm sure all members have read on the agenda, so I will keep it as short as possible. Antisocial behaviour is a key priority for our residents and indeed this administration, as it is also for the police. Where it's our responsibility, we are taking every action possible, including improving security measures, dealing with public space protection orders, issuing community protection warnings and notices, acceptable behaviour agreements and ASB injunctions. As the Councillor Sylvia mentioned earlier, we also have responsibility for CCTV, or majority of CCTVs in the borough. I've deliberately not listed where those are because I don't really want to sit on hands and so people actually know where they are. But please engage with me if there is a specific problem or a specific area where you feel that we need CCTV, either for community protection or indeed to enhance the police's ability to catch criminals, then we can see what we can do. We've already done this in secret wise on request, and as my understanding is it's made a huge impact, which is exactly what we want, and that's exactly what CCTV should be. As mentioned by the PFCC, the role of the council, council has a role for antisocial behaviour, and as do the police. Obviously, the police are there to arrest drug dealers and burglars. We are there to support the police in combating antisocial behaviour, community engagement, and indeed improving community confidence. We've been doing that over the past year, and it has been generating results. The funding has been made available this year, so the police, as part of the partnership, As Green, as we know, the injunction against gang-related activity under Operation Raptor for 11 individuals. As Claire Talbot mentioned, so I won't go through everything she's already said. Operation Caesar has been used in relation to the antisocial use of motorbikes and quad bikes. Since October, the statute quoted 6 arrests for various offences, including intent to supply, 1 nice seized, stolen vehicles recovered, 50 moving traffic offences have been reported, 10 vehicles seized, and the list goes on and on and on. And again, you would have heard from the PFCC this evening that we're investing £1 million over the next 3 years on a dedicated police team to be based initially at Thurrock Council offices to work with community priorities and increase the visibility and ensure the residents feel safe in their communities. This is on top of the 15 police officers that the Police and Fire Crime Commission precept for 2018 is going to be paying for. Now, these officers will not be sitting in this office. They will be based in this office and will be going out on duties, on shift, as you would expect police officers to do so visibly. But this portfolio is not all about just working with the police. One example in particular is our Trading Standards team, which handles over 1/3 of the seized goods in the UK and continues to lead in an exemplary way. I have visited them at DP World along with members of Parliament to see the work done, and I can assure you they truly are the front line in the defence against unsafe goods for our residents. Many of these goods either don't work, will be unsafe for children, could injure residents, or in worst case could lead to fires. Certainly some of the equipment I saw was shocking, and I use that both as a minor joke and indeed as it was, the plugs would barely fit into our plug sockets, exposing anyone to be able to touch the wires. Now I could stand here all night, as I said, and cover everything in my portfolio and the great work that it does, but I'm not here to do that. I'm here to answer questions from you. So instead of doing that, Mr. Mayor, I would like to open this report up for questions.
Thank you. In Councillor Worrell's absence, Councillor Lawrence, as Deputy Chair of the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you for that in-depth report. As I remember, last year you informed the Chamber that the Council was looking to get an injunction to help stop unlawful encampments being set up on the Council green spaces. Could you update the Chamber on this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the report, it does actually outline that last year we had a slight reduction in the number of unlawful encampments, down from 66 to 57, which is obviously a step in the right direction. Directly in relation to the injunction, since collecting the evidence, I know members have spoken to by staff and asked for their input as well. There's been a High Court case from the versus others, which has brought a stop on all of these injunctions nationally. Until the outcome of that is known, we won't be able to proceed. My understanding from officers is the very second this is resolved, depending on the outcome, we should still be able to proceed with the main part of the injunction, but where it includes others that may be changed on the outcome of the particular case. I'm also assured that the case we have is exceptionally strong and probably one of the best to be put forward. So hopefully just go forward at some point once the original case is heard, and then we can be yet another template for everybody else to try and make this happen.
Councillor John Kent, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I enjoyed reading the report. There's clearly lots of good stuff going on. But yesterday we had the latest crime figures published, which show that crime in Thurrock is up 10% year on year. Violence against the person up by 36% at the same time as the volume of crimes being solved is down by 4%. So although I accept there's a lot of good work going on, the situation is clearly getting worse. Can I ask the Member of the Council just to give us some comfort as to how things are going to be better in a year's time?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I must say I'm shocked at the question. Indeed, we've just had the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner here, the local area commander here, and the question about crime figures wasn't actually raised by yourself. However, equally, I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot tell you exactly what's going to happen in a year. All I can say is we're using £1 million of money from here to bring in extra officers. As you heard this evening, Essex Police are put in extra officers to boost that particular amount that we would get from here, plus the 15 that the preceptors paid for. So that's 23, actually, from what we heard, possibly 24 extra police officers. 24 police officers that weren't on the street last year are going to make a difference. But what we can't escape from is more police on the streets doesn't necessarily mean reduction in crime. What actually is reducing crime is people stop committing crime. We've got to stop blaming figures, we've got to stop blaming cuts, we've got to stop blaming everything else. People commit crime. If they didn't commit crime, we wouldn't need so many police officers anyway. So let's start focusing the attention on where it needs to be, on prevention. So not only should we be guided by the number of police officers that we're employing, but we also need to put that personal responsibility back out there. Please make sure, if your children suddenly turn up with trainers and things that you don't expect them to have, there may be something going on. Start reporting that to the police so they can start intervening with that. So the crime stats not just start going down now, but as they go down in the future, because they're not getting into that criminal activity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Spill, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I echo the points about personal responsibility, but, we lost 600 officers in North Essex and 300 PSO community police officers. So it's hard to, it's not just about personal responsibility. There's a lack of deterrent because there's not any police officers anymore. They're not the used to. So, but that's not my question. My actual question is about the CCTV. Is the CCTV used to gather evidence after an incident has occurred, or is it actually monitored live? And if so, how many officers are involved? Are they Thurrock officers or are they Essex police officers?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Spillman, for your great question. CCTV cameras are used in both. They are used live with officers, council officers, not police officers, monitoring them as part of the concierge service in Tilbury. And of course, where they're recorded, if a crime has happened, the police make many requests to us to see what they've got on the CCTV in order to help collect evidence to commit criminals. It's not just those that are permanent manned, there are other CCTV equipment that we're using. Obviously, I won't go into too much detail, but again, they have been used recently to deal with some antisocial behaviour and indeed a drug dealer in premises within the borough. We are currently going through a review of the CCTV, whether the CCTV should remain in the Tilbury concierge, whether it should be moved to perhaps here in the office or somewhere, but to make sure that the cameras that we do have are usable, pointing in the right direction, because some of them haven't really been maintained for far too long.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Pothcary.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Bledel for your portfolio report. I just wanted to raise an issue that sort of gained a lot of traction in the spring, which was the Vice article about gangs operating in Thurrock, which was pretty grim reading, though it told us a lot that we already were sort of hearing and what we knew from what we've seen ourselves. Obviously, there was an exacerbating factor in that of London councils following Home Office strategy and policy to relocate problematic or at-risk gang members, people at risk of becoming gang members, into Thurrock. I'm just wondering what conversations the council's been having with the Home Office and with London councils, possibly the GLA, about either trying to stop that from happening, because Thurrock is obviously 30 minutes from London, not a great place for this, but also about actually making sure that our YOS and Essex Police and the council are notified when this is happening, so that we can actually try and sort of support the process if there is one.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pothcary, for your question. This actually goes beyond Thurrock. I've, as part of the Essex Leaders group, we've already signed letters to go to the Mayor of London, pointing out that there is an obligation for London councils to notify us when they're moving people out their area to not just Thurrock, but any of the local authorities. What was shocking was to hear the senior police officer who was at the meeting at the time telling us that they weren't notified of people that were coming out that had serious problems, serious criminal records, had things they really should be on their radar, including child exploitation, and they were being moved out without any notice at all. So this is now expanded from it just being a housing problem and gang-related problem to actually a police force problem. We have the chair of the London Councils is written back to us. He's quite happy to meet us all to discuss how to move this forward in a good working protocol, other than those nice words that the Central Home Office have said that we need to do, same with DCLG, to make sure that this is going to work. We can't just keep on moving the problem from London to Thurrock to somewhere else, or from London to anywhere in Essex. So this is being worked on. The process at the moment really doesn't work because it relies on other agencies notifying us. Our MPs are fully aware, as is the Home Secretary.
Councillor Kieran, we're coming to the end of this, so if you could make it a very succinct question.
I will do. Thank you. With regards to the CCTV, you're absolutely right that it's welcome, especially on Seaford Rise, where my residents are pleased with CCTV. My understanding is the most recent CCTV was the result of a petition, so I just wondered if there's a way of engaging more fully with the Seaford State Residents Association to sort of identify where CCTV would be welcome, because the residents are the best source of information for where CCTV should go. But it's very welcome, and please keep it coming.
Right, that's all the time we have for questions.
I'll just answer that one. As with any housing resident association, we do resident association, we do neighbourhood watch or new measure. If there is a problem, obviously through housing, they've come through housing, there's a joint team that works on that. When it comes to neighbourhood watch and so on, if they go through the Safe and Thorough Partnership, again, we will take the evidence from anywhere. As Councillor Smith alluded to earlier, when residents sit at home and go, oh, the police don't do nothing, the council don't do nothing, we won't, because we haven't got the intelligence to focus our resources. So we do need that information coming from residents to us, so we can work with the police to find out where the best we can put our equipment. So yeah, please make sure that they know to engage. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the report, obviously, it is quite great with the amount of money we're spending on this. It is and will make a difference already. We've seen the results that happened with Operation Raptor, Operation Caesar, and long may they continue. As I said, it's not just working with the police. We are at the forefront of public protection, whether it be licensing, whether it be trade standards or food safety. We are the people that residents will need to come to if there is a problem. I will just touch briefly in closure on the environmental enforcement team on page 106. There was a whole raft of notifications that we notices that have been issued out by that team. You must remember that team has been built up as part of the Clean House and Phillip campaign since we took control of the authority. And just look at the results. When I think back before that, on the previous administration, we had no tickets being issued, not much action being taken at all. So this is a big step forward. So residents will know that we are taking action, and we will continue to take action against those that like this borough. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. We now move on to item 14. The second report. The second report, Councillor Coxon, Cabinet Member for Regeneration, can be found on pages 113 to 126 of the agenda. Councillor Coxon, would you please introduce the report in 5 minutes?
Thank you very much. I won't take the 5 minutes up. You can see this so exciting, the press have left. So it's wrong again. Well, I'm just didn't even get my best line, which is the first line, because it's really important that this literature agenda, this paper. And it's actually, Thurrock is one of the largest growth areas in the United Kingdom, which is the shared press on seeing there, and it's got huge ambitions. There's £1 billion worth of planned investment going into new jobs, homes and infrastructure in the coming years. That's a huge sum of money into a small borough. And I'm proud this department's work in a number of places, delivering administration's objectives to make this Thurrock the best place to live, work and play. And as you may have seen them signs up quite coming up across the boroughs and the regeneration areas. I'm also working with the central government, and we always, the opposition always seem to have a go at central government of how much investment that we've secured to make that real changes and real development improvements. Just a few in recent times are The east-facing slips, I'm pleased now the government have given that the green light to this, and have granted £47 million to this massive improvement. It will make such a difference to our road network, and especially, well, normally around Christmas especially, but it will make a major difference around the west end of the borough, around Purfleet, around the Lakeside Basin, which is really critical. This comes on top of another £80 million happening to the road widening of the A13 when complete. I know there's some issues when we're building these big projects, but as we mentioned earlier, it's a huge project for a local authority to undertake. And but that will make a major difference. And what I wish now is hopefully Essex County Council will do that, and we can make A13 a proper trunk road again. The plans to deliver 4 integrated medical centres in Tilbury, Corringham, Grays and Purfleet will transform the health access to our service, to our people across the area where we all live, to making health services much closer to the place where we actually want them instead of walking distance, saving massive opportunities of actually our patients in value. This investment of £80 million will also refurbish and improve a Thurrock hospital in Long Lane. We do have a Thurrock hospital, it's called Thurrock Hospital, and if our activists are in that, it will be a fantastic opportunity to have our hospital with our patients' GP provision, massive provision now, and we need to actually move forward with that. And then finally, and added to that, 10 new schools in 10 years by the end of 2020. That is a huge investment of nearly over £120 million, £70 million coming in the next 2 years. That delivers, by the end of 2020, over 5,000 new school places. This shows this Conservative government and the Conservative Council here's commitment to a mantra that we've been trying again of infrastructure first. This is a real level ambition, which has sadly been lacking in the last administrations we've seen for far too many years. On the planning side, which we'll talk about at the moment, is this infrastructure first moves again to mostly community driven to underline the approach of the local plan. Through the local plan, the issues and options out at the moment, we are closely asking views of what the long-term look of what Thurrock should look like. We have some real choices to make at this stage, and it's an opportunity for all of us to shape the Thurrock for the next generation of coming people to live here. And I would encourage everyone here today, including the public and everyone, to involve themselves and get involved before the deadline of March the 1st. We also have in the planning department managing major project applications, which alone will create another 5,000 new homes and 5,000 new jobs. It's a promising time for Thurrock, when investor confidence and borough growing tremendously with new jobs and homes coming online in the next few years. On the asset strategy, we've had a complaint from a local resident concerning what happened about releasing our asset strategies. We've now implemented the retain, release and reuse, this mantra, which will actually maximise the income for our assets that we own, to keep our council tax low and down. And that's what we've actually got to do with the ethos of this. With the ethos of the words we all agreed in here, fewer buildings, better service as a starting place. Yeah. And with that, I really hope to have some questions about my portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Kieran, as Chair of the Planning, Transport and Regeneration Overrun Committee, would you like to speak?
Yes, please, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you for this report, Councillor Cockshaw. Reading through it, there's a lot to be excited and looking forward to in the years to come in Thurrock. Unfortunately, the excitement is tempered somewhat by the delays and uncertainty hanging over some of the crucial projects that are contained within. If we start with Tilbury, for example, Civic Square is the heart of the town and rightly deserves the potential investment. However, we do know that the future integrated medical hub, which is linked to this plan, is uncertain and linked to the fortunes of Allsop Hospital, even though we were assured at the beginning of this process that it wasn't. In Grays, the much-heralded underpass, designed to deal with the substantially increased traffic between Corrigan and London, is dependent on uncertain financial commitments from Network Rail. Indeed, the only certainty for Grays south of the railway line is the multi-million-pound refurbishment of these civic offices, which is rightly opposed by many of our residents. The hope and optimism that's centred on the regeneration of Purfleet has been dampened by the years of delay. And my hope, my hope is that the opening of the new secondary school in September will be the catalyst for the great things to finally happen to this town.
Can you get to your question, please?
Okay, here's a direct one. Finally, when you think about the local plan, it is the plan of all plans, and it's behind schedule and a state government intervention by the skin of its teeth. So what I'm really disappointed with is why the local plan merits only 2 paragraphs in this report, and why there's not been more information really about how the newly constituted multi-party task force can become integral to the process. So in response, lots of optimism, tempered by the realities of the past few years, and I hope it's all the things in here executed in a timely and efficient way. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Councillor Cottrell.
Well, that's an amazing thing, because let's go through them. We can take them off one by one. And it's Yahoo politics, but it's an open guard. Like Tilbury Civic Square. Like, if your party didn't object to it, we would be moving forward now. You've referred it to the Secretary of State. We're waiting for the Secretary of State to come back. And so like, we would be moving forward with a business plan. It's just absolutely ridiculous that you can blame this administration for a delay caused by the opposition. It's ridiculous. Right, Grays Town Centre. Grays Town Centre is critical to the regeneration and the foot crossing here. Again, the foot crossing. There is Network Rail's money is not. We are planning all the time to deliver the £11 million that the central government has given us. And when you come down here, we walk down the High Street, and it was delivered to in the business plan, if you read it, in 1920. We are still on target to do 1920 start. So for moving forward and Group 3. Yes, Network Rail are indeed a bit of a problem. They've been a problem across the country. But that goes into way above my pay grade. I mentioned to the members of Parliament, Ev Wrigley and other ministers that we've got to sort Network Rail out. But that's the problem. But we're moving on without them. To moving forward in line with it. Purfleet, another one. Purfleet Regeneration Limited have been tedious. Signed contract by the last administration continuously. We've moved in, we've put Swamp Housing come in. It's moved on at a faster pace now. The continuous thing, the Mayor of London, I hope to remove his objections so we can move forward there. So, have a word with the Mayor of London, please. I don't have much contact with him. For his reasons. The local plan. Now, the local plan.
Councillor Coxall.
Yeah.
Can we...
Well, I've asked 4 long questions. I had to answer each 4 of them. The local plan, there's very little on the local plan because we're listening and we're open to consultation. We had a time, we had a whole lot.
Councillor Coxall.
That's it. So that's our 4. We can move on.
Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak?
I will be briefer. Councillor Perry has alluded to the plans to demolish and extend 6 civic offices. Lavish plans including £200,000 for what's described as a grand entrance. In the absence of any business plan having been published, can the portfolio holder explain how this £10 million investment will benefit residents?
Right. In a business and the private-public partnerships, the public body has to do its work as well. We all want to see a new Grays Town Centre. Now, the Grays Town Centre, when Councillor Kent was on the Thames Estuary Commission, which we finally got rid of that Quango in 2011, but that Quango came up with the idea, and I think it's a reasonable idea, that this Grays should be the civic capital, the civic head of the borough. Making that means we need to develop and sort out our own public buildings here. And our public buildings here, we've got 2 public buildings with the library at one end, and with this here, the large building which is funny shaped, with the wrong entrance now. We've actually changed that. We changed the entrance where no one knows the entrance now because we've not got a car park there. Building that with the Grey South project, everything the Grounds Grays, the new High Street. We must do our bit, and then because we've got to get public bodies further up the High Street doing their bit with their private sector investment around Crown House, around the new state theatre, the cinema developments. So we can't do our bit as much as the public bodies. So that's why I think £7 million, up to £10 million, depending which options, has got to move forward.
Councillor Spill, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Given that the plans for a new theatre at the sea on the riverfront appear to be yesterday's news, and now we're looking at the redevelopment of the Thames site so it's actually more fit for purpose, does it agree with me that it is absolutely essential that we've got 2 floors in there that are just not generating any revenue that could be used to generate significant revenue and provide a real fantastic cultural offering for Grays? Can you assure me that this is on his agenda? Because at the moment we are wasting space, I believe, in that building. We've got to deal with it now and get Grays moving again.
I agree with you entirely. I think we've got to move forward at that place. One of the first opportunities is actually when we develop the civic offices here and moving staff, like we just heard the police moving here at the moment into here, and then we've moved the registry office, which is part of the plans to move the registry office to a proper wedding area into the new civic offices, which means it gives a better opportunity to what we want to do with that building. And we do need to bring a paper in the next year or so to actually make sure that what the options are there, what we're going to do as we develop the civic offices and the new civic offices and move selling this bit where we're now sitting, and we can actually look at what we want and what cultural offering do we want to deliver in that building. And it could be a very amazing building there to actually do something about. And I think that needs a lot more consultation, a lot more with members' engagement right the way through here. And I'll be working with hopefully everyone to see what sort of money. Part of that is how we decide to keep the asset, what we've got to do and how we can maximise our income, because that's what I was mentioning about making sure that keeps our council tax low by maximising incomes from our assets.
Councillor Smith, you have a question.
Thank you, and I always enjoy reading these sorts of reports. It's right on the money for me. There's a connecting thread through all of these 21st century schemes that we've got coming forward: Purfleet, the Lakeside Basin, Great South, and then over in the east, London Gateway and Thames Enterprise. Now, what plans? We talk about roads, mate, when we're talking about connecting people. But what assurances can the portfolio holder give me that alongside these great projects that we've got coming down the road, that we will be looking directly at some 21st century transport, people moving schemes to really get this borough moving and take the stranglehold off the roads?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at massive modal rail transport, I think you're talking about something like that. We've got a great public service in bus. I think it's won an award again this year, the independent public bus service, as the best in the country as an independent bus provider. But we're talking about rail schemes. I think we've got some road schemes. We're looking at roads. We've been investing in roads in the last few years. If you look at what's happened at Junction 30, Junction 31, the around down there, we've got the lease facing slips, and we've got the A13 major investments happening. But the modal rail transport is an issue of how to deliver that, and we can't do that in isolation. And that it does need to be working through the South Essex partners to make sure, and especially Thames Estuary partners as well. I've had numerous conversations with in the London boroughs about how we can work and how we can actually do it. And I think you'd be surprised, we could hopefully bring in something forward, maybe in the joint strategic plan and what we're going to do in the next year or so, to actually see what we can end with that and what can be achieved through that in the next few years. So that is something that needs to be looked at. But Thurrock is a small borough, and it can't do these things in isolation to make it to the government that sort of billions. So £1 billion sounds a lot of money, but when you talk about rail, it's a lot more money than £1 billion.
Right, Councillor Coxall, would you please like to sum up? You have 2 minutes.
Well, there wasn't many questions.
Well, there wasn't.
That's fine. No, I'd leave it there. It's just to reiterate, what I am concerned about is obviously, yes, there wasn't much in the plan, the local plan. It is critical here, but I thought that, apparently I mentioned it with me mentioning speeches, we'll have some more questions about the local plan. The local plan is critical, and we asked, I think you saw the wrap last week in the paper, really important. It is a critical item that us 49 councillors, after the public had their say, have got major decisions about the next 20 years plus, because it they don't come very often, and it is an important part of this. And we hear about housing tonight. I really want that sort of thing, conversation about how we're going to deliver more council houses, how we're going to deliver that. These conversations need to happen. I think we're all of one here that we do want to deliver more low-cost social housing. And I personally want to deliver them through the council, because I think that's the best way to get people on the ladder and get incomes and actually deliver that properly. And I'm pro that. I'm on Macmillan. I want to see that massive. I want so my central government, my central government deliver the Macmillan-esque, which I've said before, housing numbers and the council houses. And that's what I'm planning to do, and that's what I'll be fighting my colleagues and the rest of the people here to do.
Thank you, Councillor Cossey. We now move on to item 15, questions from members. To answer questions from members in the order in which they are submitted. We have up to 30 minutes for this item. There is one question to the leader and 10 questions to cabinet members. These can be found on page 127 to 128 of the agenda. One question was rejected.
I had 2 rejected.
Yeah, I have information on one view rejected.
But there's 3 sitting here.
We'll look into that. Can I please ask members to be as brief as possible in their questions and answer to ensure that we cover as many questions submitted tonight. Those questions not dealt with at this meeting, the member to whom the question is answered shall provide a written answer as soon as practical after the meeting. I would like to remind members that any supplementary question they ask must be one question that relates to the original question and not form part of the statement. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask those members who have submitted questions to please read out their question when asked to do so. Question 1 to the Leader of the Council. Councillor Fletcher, please read out your question as set out on page 127.
Mr Deputy Mayor, in view of the conversations we've had earlier on this evening, I think that question's been pretty thoroughly dealt with, so I withdraw the question.
Thank you, Councillor. Move on to question 2. Councillor Shannon, please read out your question as set out on page 127 of the agenda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Holden, can you please inform me and the Chamber what plans have been put in place after the Essex inspection at the Oakland Academy?
Councillor Holden, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Well, when the Ofsted report was published, if you read the full report, it's already referencing existing improvements that the new head has already been making. Obviously, they have to put an improvement plan in place as a response to the Ofsted inspection, even though improvements were already in place under the new leadership of the school. The director has visited the school, I visited the school, and we're keeping close eye on the improvement plans. But what we need to do to improve any school, to look at both ends of the spectrum, we have to support the primary schools in the area, because no school sits in isolation. So we need to support the primary schools to make sure that children who leave year 6 are given the best possible chance to start year 7. So myself and Councillor Jeffries visited the Benton School just before Christmas, as we look to invest large sums of money to expand those schools. So local Auckland children get to go to good schools and therefore get the best up before they get to the secondary school. And in terms of the secondary school, we're making sure we continue to work with the teaching schools in the borough. William Edwards leads one of our big teaching schools to act as that peer-on-peer support at the higher end.
Councillor Shilling, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
I haven't a supplementary, thank you.
Move on to question 3. Councillor Shilling, please read out your question as set out on page 127 of the agenda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Johnson, can can you please inform me, the Chamber, what plans are there for painting garages and staying?
Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. Let me start by saying we are intending to undertake a full structural integrity survey to all council-owned garages to establish which garages are not cost-effective to repair and where our priority spend should be, and that a report on garage review will be presented to the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of February. But specifically, as the question relates to the Flowers Estate in Ockenden, I am glad you brought it up because Councillor Jeffries and I had a walk around the estate with the chair of the Residents Association, who pointed out several things that he would like done. And in relation to the actual garages, obviously we need for the weather to improve, but he's proposed to request the assistance of the Community Payback Team and the Probation Service to begin a programme of painting garage doors in the standalone blocks to improve the outlook for residents. Our Community Safety Partnership Manager has agreed this could be a project for the Community Payback to be involved with. As I said, it's being checked out now, and once that's happened, we'll then look to begin to demolish the blocks which are beyond repair and utilise the space to provide additional parking or redevelopment. And in specifically, as we are talking about the Flower Estate, something emanated from that same walkabout with Councillor Jeffries and I, that he was asked to look at the installation of CCTV around the Quince Tree Park area, which I can say is currently being considered by the Housing ASB team.
Councillor Sinner, if you wish to pose a supplementary question.
Yeah, I'd just like to hope that you can keep the local community informed, you know, as what's still happening.
Most definitely. Most definitely will, sir.
Question 4. Councillor Addis, please read out your question as set out on page 27 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My question is for Councillor Watkins. Road conditions are Elm Terrace are really bad and require urgent attention. Do you have any plans to resurface this road?
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. I am sorry to disappoint you, Councillor, as I understand the frustrations no doubt yourself and residents were experiencing this road. But the road in question is unadopted and thus private. This means the road, unfortunately, is not maintained by the council, and the responsibility does fall on the freeholders and frontages of that road. As I say, I understand this is disappointing to hear, especially for those residents. However, I would advise yourself and those residents, if in case you're not sure, heard of this before, we do have something called the CEDF fund, which runs every single year. Applications will be starting again soon, where residents can come together, work with the council to put a grant in to try and take some money from that fund in order to repair the roads. A great example, if you want an example where a community has come together in order to repair particular private sections of roads. The Frost Estates in Coronham, they are showing an example of a community group which have come together to work on them roads and doing an awful lot of work, not just in 2016, but again in 2019 this year as well, they're doing some more work. So again, as I say, I understand it's frustrating. If you'd like some more information about the CEDF fund, please let me know, we'll get that shared out to you. And if you want to explain how it can work and how residents can work with that as well, then again, please let us know.
Councillor Abbas, do you wish to pose this up?
No, thank you.
Councillor Potterbury, please read out your question as set out on page 127.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. What role do you envisage for the arts in Thurrock?
Councillor Owen, would you like to
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Very important question, so I'll try and answer it as best I can. I see arts and culture as having a huge and very important part to play in Thurrock. By participating in the arts, we're not just helping people enjoy themselves, although the Thameside Theatre, I think, is a great asset, and last year's pantomime was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Oh yes, I did. The theatre to enjoy. Art broadens our minds, such as the World War I experience that I was privileged to attend at the theatre. I mean, who knew that suffragettes actually converted a Belgian hotel into a frontline hospital completely manned by women, doctors, surgeons, everybody there were women. Sorry, I lost my place. And then the Shakespeare workshops during the week for the children. I mean, I can still see the smiles on my face as the children's interpretation of the witches in Macbeth. The new digitalised ticketing system, which has opened up great marketing opportunities for the theatre with deals and offers for the whole community. I mean, we've seen the theatre go from being in deficit to breaking even. But as I said, by participating in arts, we're not just having fun. I want to see the arts continue to bring communities together, learning about each other's cultures, such as the Windrush celebrations and the Trailblazer programme in schools. The use of arts is well known for its health and well-being properties, and I want to see more of this. It can have great healing properties and help people to find a voice. It can be an outlet for anger as well as for love, and it helps people de-stress and can be used as a form of pain relief. It stimulates minds and increases social contact, helps fight isolation and loneliness. The possibilities are endless, and I want to see them all explored. I want to see the arts continue their great work to help communities with building and developing new skills, to open up employment opportunities and job progression. The future of the arts in Thurrock, I think, is looking amazing. Cultural industries are one of the fastest growing sectors in the South East economy, and the arts and culture can help create high quality places in the borough to support existing communities. The Council will continue to participate and support this wider agenda, which includes the TECP initiative, which recently won £4 million from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And we are a key partner in this Thames Estuary Production Corridor initiative, focusing on growth of cultural industries across London, South Essex and North Kent. We have the, we have the Tilbury community-led local development strategy with a budget of £4.4 million, supporting local people to access local jobs and develop their skills.
So we nearly talked in.
Yeah, I was just about to say, and finally. And finally, we are one of the partners working towards submitting a bid to the Arts Council Creative People and Places programme. And if successful, this will draw in a significant amount of money to support grassroots activity throughout the borough.
Councillor Coughlin, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hewlin, for that very, I apologise, it was a very broad question. But thank you very much for the outlining of your vision. And I think there's probably a lot that we would all agree on and a lot of common ground there. My supplementary question is that in the spring of 2017, the portfolio holder for culture at the time, Councillor McPherson, commissioned a Leicestershire-based consultancy company called Artreach to create a 10-year strategic vision for the arts in Thurrock at the cost of just under £15,000. Could you kindly please update us on progress towards this strategy?
Councillor Howland, would you like to respond and can we keep it?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I'll try. Thank you for the question. The art strategy hasn't been shelved. The Council developed a draft strategy for arts and heritage, but it needs to be refined and developed. And I believe that the arts, they're very organic, and inspiration and creativity. Well, you can laugh, or you can let me finish. It's up to you. I actually do feel that art is organic, and anyway. It needs to be refined and developed, and I believe the arts to be organic, and inspiration and creativity evolves and changes as ideas grow and develop, and I don't want to see that creativity stifled by the wrong strategy. Now, I believe that the very communities we live in are best placed to help develop arts projects, and it's those projects that it meets the needs, which is why officers are working closely with community organisations. In this way, we can build and develop a shared vision of priorities for cultural activity in the borough. And a good start has been made, but areas of work have been identified, including improving alignment with regional and national opportunities for funding. We want to make sure that we can get as much money into the borough as possible. And more work around job opportunities and business. I'm sorry, but it's, you know, it's a loaded question. Development and driving some of the ideas, determining how and by whom projects will be delivered. As the regeneration plans develop and options for Thameside come forward, I'm keen to see an organic strategy for the future of the arts.
Go on, Joe.
Do you have another one? Can we keep some more, please?
According to Art Richard's website, the final report on strategy was presented in March. So obviously, I'm slightly concerned that we don't seem to have heard anything about this report, this strategy that has been promised since March. It was a cost of £15,000. I hear what you're saying on perhaps wanting to do something different, but my question is, does it represent a good use of Thurrock Council taxpayers' money if we're suddenly shelving a report that cost £15,000 that could have just been distributed to the arts groups already operating in Thurrock?
I'll be very quick. I feel the money's well invested, that is being used. We're trying to refine it, we're trying to do more with it, we're trying to make sure that we encompass everything. The next portfolio whole meeting I have will be next month. I'll make sure it's brought forward and I'll give you an update.
Thank you, Councillor. We now move on to question 6. Councillor John Kemp, please read out the question set on page 128 of the agenda.
Will the portfolio holder publish a list of sites to consider for the proposed Dorset Heath Academy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the Dorset Heath Academy is being delivered by the EFSA. The EFSA conduct their own sites, and we're not aware of every single site that they considered, as they are not a council body. The council obviously helps to the EFSA to identify sites when we are asked. And as we have seen in recent history, the council does try and assist with council-owned land wherever possible to protect as much money as possible from not being spent on the procurement of land, so that money can instead be spent on education provision. And as I'm sure you understand, there are not a huge amount of sites available in Grays. It would be nice, just for the sake of variety, if we could hear a little bit of optimism from Labour councillors who actually welcome tens of millions of pounds being invested to create thousands of school places in the communities that they claim to represent.
Infrastructure first. Councillor Kent, do you wish to propose a supplementary question?
First of all, I'll come to the optimism point. I'm very, very optimistic for elections on the first Thursday of May. But just for the sake of clarity, do I take the answer to the question to be no?
Well, I'm sure you're optimistic to the elections in May. I think you're also optimistic in 2017. We know how that ended. And we've heard the answer to the question. It's slightly concerning for someone who was the Cabinet Member for Education at one stage that he doesn't actually know how the EFSA operates. They are charged to deliver the free school programme. He should know many free schools were delivered during the time he was the leader of the council. And as the body charged to deliver the free school programme, they do land scouting. As I've pointed out, we try to offer land where possible to protect money so it can actually be spent on education provision. And I've not actually found a single example of where Labour councillors have actually welcomed schools being delivered, just in the same way that you allowed the Manor School to go to wreck and ruin, so a building had to be quarantined. You opposed this school, you opposed the other site. It's just a constant bandwagon.
Councillor John Kent, do you wish to propose a second supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have all that I require.
Move on to question 7. Councillor Fletcher, please read out your question set out on page 128.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Johnson, please explain the service level agreements contracted with MEARS and their subcontractors, specifically with reference to the acceptable timescales between reporting a problem and completing the repair.
Councillor Johnson, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I will try and explain the service level agreement as succinctly as I can. Whether a repair is completed by MEARS or their subcontractors, performance is measured within a suite of contractual key performance indicators. Attendance timeframes for repairs are based on the issue or nature of the repair and are categorised as emergency repairs where attendance will be within 24 hours, urgent repairs where attendance will be within 5 working days, and routine repairs where attendance will be within 20 working days. In line with these priorities, MEARS are measured on 7 KPIs, which following strong performance in 2017-18 saw the contractual targets being enhanced for 18-19. And during 18-19 to date, MEARS have consistently achieved the enhanced contractual targets for all key performance indicators relating to repairs completed within target timeframes and repairs permanently completed first time.
Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for that comprehensive answer.
Excuse my back, Councillor.
You've got to look somewhere. So I'm pleased to hear that they consistently achieve their KPIs. May I ask the Councillor what action is taken where they don't?
Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Fletcher, I'm sorry to say this, but all the KPIs are presented at the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, of which you are a member. You would find out in those cases which ones are not being fulfilled and which ones are, which, you know, therefore you would have your say there and then to be able to report back to it on me, to me. But say your question says, explain the SLA, which I've done. Obviously, if they don't comply, there will be penalties. That's what KPIs are put in place for.
Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to pose a second supplementary?
Yes, please, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I totally agree with you, Councillor. In fact, in my first meeting of that scrutiny committee, that was exactly the question I asked. What exactly happens to those KPIs which are not met? And I'm still waiting for a comprehensive answer.
Councillor Johnson.
Then I suggest you go to the meetings, Councillor.
Moving on to question 8. Councillor Allen, please read out your question as set out on page 128 of the agenda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And my question is to Councillor Watkins. Can the portfolio holder please provide an update of the action that is being taken to tackle the fly tipping in Tilbury? Thank you.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Allen, for your question. And also, I'd like to point out your continued persistence with tackling this up and fly tipping issues in Tilbury. I will make a comment. I think, judging by your recent activity, I presume you're quite confident in that Tilbury too. So I think it goes across all ways. It only also feels like last week, which you and I had many a meeting in Tilbury, going over many of your concerns. At the time, many of those obviously were dealt with quite promptly and will continue to. And I believe, and I hope, your most recent meeting as well with the environmental officer team and enforcement team was equally as useful. Councillor, I and everyone in this chamber knows that fly tipping is a blight. It comes with not just a financial burden to taxpayers and to the council itself, but to the vision, the way people see Thurrock and the way that people feel that as they live in Thurrock. And it's despicable that people think it's right that they can come into our borough, or if they do live in this borough, that they can dump rubbish or wherever it is on our streets. We think it's fine. It's not fine, and we take a zero tolerance approach to that, and that's continued in Tilbury as well. Our enforcement teams do patrol Tilbury, all across Tilbury, across the rest of the borough as well. And where fly tipping is evidence, we do go to court and take those people responsible to court. The good thing as well is not just down to our enforcement team, which has grown this year as well. And I don't want to put the point score, but when we came in 2016, the enforcement team was on its knees, compared to where it is now, it's grown by so much. We've also trained our crews on the streets as well, as they're doing their rounds and cleaning, but they can identify a fly tip and look for evidence as well, and when necessary, they'll get the enforcement crews in as well to that further deep flow, as well as that cleaning. As well as alongside this, you would have seen the most recent press release in which Councillor Gletter, the leader, went out with the police team, and they've got some praise from councillors within, judging by some of those emails, where we have those joint operations in place where we're going after those carriers who are coming into this borough, checking their waste licences, checking to see where obviously they're going with their destination of that rubbish. And alongside this as well, we did a lot of work with the TIP, the Household Waste and Recycling Centre, over the course of 2018 in order to stop commercial enterprises using it, which has seen a slight reduction in the total amount of fly tipping coming through into the borough as well. It may only be slight, but at least we're moving in the right direction. And obviously we have announced, we went through planning a couple of weeks ago, where we are going to be generating, expanding and pumping a lot of money into the Household Waste Recycling Centre for complete expansion, which will allow enable residents to have a lot more accessibility to the site, with also future ambitions to take on commercial waste from there as well. So it gives another means for those carriers within Thurrock who are using us and servicing Thurrock people to go and use that. And we will continue to target.
It's very interesting, this one.
Cool, I just quickly start. We are continuing obviously to go against all the hotspots in Tilbury, where we do get that evidence coming from residents. We make sure the enforcement officers go out there and patrol the streets. It's not just for fly tipping, it's also for all littering concerns as well.
Councillor Adams, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for your answer there, quite extensive. With reference to CCTV, now you touched again on the hotspots. I mean, in both wards of Tilbury, we've seen fly tipping on, which I could safely say on an industrial scale. We've got tipper lorries going down these alleys and tipping whole loads onto the alleyways. I'm sure you've seen some of my photos that I've seen in my inquiries. And use of CCTV. Now, are we allowed to use temporary CCTV to obtain evidence of who's doing this? Because I suggest that we do this and catch who's responsible, because all the time we're letting them do this. I think the question has been asked. Okay, they'll do it more and more.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much for your council for your question. The answer to that is yes. We continue to work on those hotspots. We're also going to be launching a new comms plan soon, where we're going to be engaging further with residents, where also we're going to be seeking information not just on the hotspots which we know of, but obviously any hotspots which people don't want to particularly report at this point in time, and we're going to engage with those residents. So the answer to that is yes, and we can engage further with you about where we move forward with that. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Adams, do you have another supplementary?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be very brief. I'd just like Councillor Watkins to look into Thurrock Road in Tilbury, please, because it's in a terrible mess at the moment. It needs clearing up, and again, CCTV would be fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins, can you make a brief?
I'm aware of it, and we are working on it.
Thank you. Question 9, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm delighted that the AV traffic consultation is now underway. Much looking forward to that. However, residents of Rockford Road are also blighted by rat runs, HGV incursion. Does Council or does the portfolio holder have any plans to deal with these issues in Rockford Road?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm aware of the time, so I'll keep this very brief. I also am equally delighted with the fact we've gone out to consultation on this. It's a long time coming, and I'm glad that we pushed the team in order to get that. I encourage all residents across AV to have a say on this. It's not just one size-fits-all model. There are multiple options currently on the table for the consultation, and we're listening to every single person who does write in. So residents from Rockford Road, we do will take their feedback on board, and then as we move forward, once out of the consultation, consultations, when we develop those plans, we look at what the road residents as an example are saying to see how that can obviously change the rules of work for that area, and also the same way we're looking at work we're doing in Lockington, and we spoke to Councillor Fletcher and others about recently in regards to how that also have a knock-on effect of Lockington.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Smith.
No, I'll make way for Councillor Spillman.
We've run out of time. Councillor Spillman, do you wish to withdraw, resubmit, or have a written?
The portfolio holder wasn't here anyway, so I was going to ask for a written answer, so that's not a problem. Thank you.
It's now 9:30 and it's closed. It is now closed to the meeting. Oh, members with motions. Sorry. Members with motions still can speak on the motion for no more than 3 minutes before the motion will be put to the vote without debate, or they may withdraw the motion and resubmit to the next available meeting.
Mr. Kelly. Yeah, thank you very much. So, given the time, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll be very brief. Following the latest progression of the library plan, I, as Chair, would like to, Chair and Planning would like to submit and propose the following motion, which I believe will give overdue scrutiny, PCR especially, a big representation on how Section 106 monies are scoped, allocated and spent. I'll skip right to the last page. The administration believe in the importance of allowing all elected members on all sides to be able to be constructively advised us on how they want that money spent. As I do find sometimes, whilst Section 106 money is fantastic, it is allocated in the right areas. It can be difficult for local councillors in local areas to gain access to that and have real input. In the past, it's normally something that's been dealt by the council, or the administration and officers. So hopefully we can pass this motion this evening and give each elected member a stronger role in how the money is allocated. And of course, with the local plan formulating, we can send a message to officers that we really would like bigger input on how those decisions are made. So with that, I'd like to close the motion and I'll second it. Thank you.
Second that. We now move straight to the vote. Are members in agreement with the motion? Agreed. Motion carried. Will members please stand for the formal vote of the meeting? I conclude the business of the meeting this evening and I now declare the meeting closed.